Hi, I'm Ryan, and today I'm going to be going through a tutorial on how to build an aluminium honeycomb tub. So we've got most of the things that we require laid out for us already. So we've got our measuring tools, so we've got a set square, scribe and a ruler. We've got our aluminium honeycomb panel, which comprises of two 0.7mm layer thick, sandwiching a 12.5mm thick layer of aluminium honeycomb. We also have our drawing ready to go, our strips of aluminium for stripping the inside to give extra strength to the joints, and our straight edge to make sure all the edges we make are perfectly straight. So the first thing we need to do is we need to mark out our chicken strips to the correct length to be able to bridge the gaps after we route out the material and when we make folds. So what you're going to need is ruler and scribe. So we know that our panel is 250mm. So we're just going to measure out 250mm, put marks on each one, then using set square, you can mark a straight line across, which has already been done here, as you can see, line across. You also will want to put a centre line down the middle. This is in preparation for when you make your bends. Let's go cut these on the guillotine. Before carrying out any work in the workshop, we need to make sure we're in the correct attire. So I've got my overalls on, got my safety goggles, so now we can head over and into the workshop. Alright, so the method that we're going to use to cut the chicken strips to length is going to be using the guillotine here. So as well as our safety goggles, you also need to use ear defenders when using the guillotine. I'd also like to point out at this point that this does not count as your guillotine training, so you can't use this machine until you have spoken to the workshop managers. So, first thing we're going to do is we're going to load in our length. We'll set the length to 250mm, and the machine will slide it. Then we're ready to cut. So we're going to slide the piece of material along the straight edge and using the foot pedal to clamp down and cut. Repeat the process for all 6 chicken strips, and you want to make sure the machine's turned off before you go to collect the material. Right, so now that we've got all of our lengths cut correctly, we need to bend them. So using the lines that we marked out earlier with the centre line, we can bend to the correct angle. So by using the machine to set the correct angle to 45 degrees for the first set. Simply load the piece into the machine. You can stand clear. We will repeat this for all 6 sheets, with 2 of the thicker sheets being for the 90-degree bends. Okay. So now that we've got our chicken strips all marked out and bent ready, we need to mark out where we're going to be routing. So by using the drawing, we mark the centre line. So the first one is 64.65mm in. So just mark that out on the panel with our scribe, and then using our set square. Then repeat the process for the remaining lines. Once we've marked out the centre lines for each of the routing bits, we then need to mark out just guidelines either side for the thickness that is required. So for the drawing that we're using, we've got 2 different thicknesses, a 10.9 and a 26.4. The 26.4 is for the 90-degree bend and the 10.9 for the 45. as you can see, I've already marked some of them out. So there's a line either side of the center line so that we can use as a guide. So to route out the top layer of material from the honeycomb, we're going to use the router here. We're going to fit the circular black disc to the bottom, because that way when we go along, it's always got contact with the straight edge to make sure we hold it in a straight line. We've got variation of bit sizes, which can be changed depending on what the width of the cut that we're requiring. So in this case, we've got a 10mm bit located, which will be perfect for the 10.9mm cut. Before commencing, we need to make sure that we're only taking off the top 0.7mm skin. So to do so, we just loosen this off, maneuver the plate so that you've only got a small bit of drill bit showing. It's a good idea to test the thickness of how deep you're going on a practice panel until you get the exactly right depth of your cuts. Okay, so before routing, we need to make sure that the workpiece is securely clamped to the surface. And that eye protection is worn at all times. It's always a good idea to do a couple of test pieces and test runs just to get used to using the handheld router. It also helps you gauge your depth so that you know that you've got exactly the right depth before you start on your actual workpiece. When using the router, if you've got the front logo and the on and off button facing in front of you, you want to go from the left to the right. As you can see, we've done a first run and it was slightly too deep, so we've altered the depth of the cut and we ended up removing just the top skin as we were aiming for. So now we're ready to cut on the actual workpiece. We're marking up for the actual lines. We use the straight edge and we go along, lining up the actual routed bit with our two guidelines and our center line that we've put in already. Putting this alongside with the straight edge. And we go along the line, making sure that it stays exactly where we need it all the way along. Once you're happy, clamp down the straight edge and clamp down the workpiece.
Action.
Due to the pieces that we have in here at the university, we don't actually have a piece that is 26mm in diameter for routing. So what we'll do instead is we're going to use the 13mm bit and we're just going to run twice. So we'll go once on this side of the line, once on this side of the line, and that should give us our total of 26mm. As you can see, we've now routed out all of the top layer material where we need to. So the 45-degree bends, the thinner, more narrow sections, and then the 90-degree bends, the chunkier sections. So now that they're done, we can begin to bend and form the shape. So on the actuator, we'll have an insert to sit within honeycomb, which we can fold up against. But for this one, because it's just a small piece, we'll be able to use sash clamps to hold the shape that we're after. It's a good idea to bend upwards from one side and then the other side and bring it to the middle to meet. So we'll start on this bend, followed by this one, then this one. So when you're bending, what you want to do is you want to make sure you've got a strong pressure applied to the flat panel here, and then lift the other piece.
Yep.
Now that we've bent the honeycomb to the rough shape, we're going to add the supports to hold it into place. So first thing you need to do is to rough up the edges that you're adhering to, and also on the inside of the tub. Once you've prepared the surfaces for gluing, we'll be using araldite to glue them together, and the ratio that we use to the araldite to the hardener is 100 to 40 grams. So measure out. It's recommended that you use a small amount when using it on the tub. as it does set you don't want to waste it. Just over 50 grams in there. Which we can add the hardener to. Once you've got the correct ratio, just need to make sure that you mix it thoroughly and it becomes all one colour. Once you've got your iodite mixed together, grab your strip and apply a layer of iodite onto it. Make sure you get a nice, good, even coating. Once you've got the glue on the strip, locate it where it belongs and leave to set. Repeat the process then for the remaining strips, then clamp it in position to give extra strength and leave to set. And that's how you build a tub.